The first thing I remember is the shout of the market crowd that day. People were running forward, calling each other to come and see something strange. I was in the middle of my campaign walk, wiping sweat from my face, when I heard the market women shouting that a bus conductor had come back to return money. I thought it was a lie. In this same country where people fight because of small change, a conductor came back to return 100 naira. The noise grew louder, and I could see heads turning, hands flying in the air, and the crowd opening like they had seen a miracle. Before I even knew what was happening, someone pushed me from behind and said I should come and see with my own eyes. That moment pulled me like a magnet. I moved fast, brushing through the crowd, and when I reached the front, I saw the small boy they were calling a hero. His shirt was dusty, his face tired, his body sweating like he had been running for hours. He held one old 100 naira note in his hand. In front of him stood a young woman holding a nylon bag. Her eyes were wide like she could not believe what she was seeing. The crowd kept shouting that the boy came back after many hours just to return her balance. That was the moment my heart jumped. I felt something inside me shake. It was like the whole of Nigeria was standing in that small space. Just then, my security man tapped me and told me the crowd was getting too big, but I did not move. I stayed there and watched the conductor explain himself. I kept staring at that 100 naira note. So small, yet the whole market was making noise because of it. I felt my chest open. I felt hope like fresh air inside me. People kept pulling me, telling me to talk to them, but my mind had already traveled back to the beginning of my day. That morning, I woke up with worry in my chest. Election was near. People were tired of promises. I wanted to run on the message of honesty, but sometimes I felt foolish. This was a country where truth had almost died. Everywhere I went, people looked at me with suspicion. They listened but did not believe. Even when I spoke from my heart, I could see doubt in their eyes. I kept asking myself if the message of truth could still work in a land that had suffered too much. I entered Oyingbo Market that day with that same feeling. My body was tired from walking. My mind was tired from thinking. I had shaken many hands, smiled at many people, and listened to many complaints. Everywhere smelled of spice, fish, heat, and hustle. I kept wondering if Nigerians still had space in their hearts for good stories. Little did I know that a small boy in a torn shirt was about to answer that question for me. I pushed closer to the crowd until I could hear the conductor clearly. His voice was shaking, not because he was scared, but because he was tired. He said he had finished his bus work for the day and was counting his money when he noticed he had extra 100 naira that did not belong to him. He said he remembered the woman in the yellow dress who paid him earlier. He said something inside his chest did not let him rest. He said he kept seeing her face in his mind, so he came back to find her. The market women beside me kept shouting that this kind of honesty had died in Nigeria, that this boy must be blessed. As I watched him talk, my heart moved in a way I had not felt in many years. The boy was not educated. His English was broken. His clothes were old. Yet everything about him was pure. The young woman he returned the money to kept staring at him like she was looking at a miracle. She said the 100 naira was the last money she needed to complete what she came to buy in the market. She said she had walked up and down looking for a way to manage without it. Now this boy had brought it back. She held the money in her palm like gold. People kept gathering. Some climbed stools to see better. Some stretched their necks. Some were shaking their heads. I saw one old man wiping his eyes. In all my years of campaign and public life, I had never seen Nigerians this excited over something so small. It was not the money. It was what the money represented. It was the shock of seeing honesty still alive in a place where survival had turned many hearts cold. I stepped forward. The crowd saw me and started shouting my name. But I raised my hand for silence because this moment did not belong to me. It belonged to the boy and the woman. I asked the conductor for his name. He said his name was Segun, and he lived in a small one room with his mother and two younger brothers. He said things had been hard for them since his father died. He said sometimes he slept on an empty stomach because he made sure his brothers ate first. His voice cracked when he talked about his mother. As he spoke, I kept looking at his hands. They were rough, small and full of hard work. Hands that should still be in school were instead hanging on the side of danfos every day. The truth of his life stood in front of me, naked and painful. He did not return the money because he had plenty. He returned it because he was raised to fear God and to keep his word. Right there, I knew this was the sign I had been praying for. The message I wanted to preach was standing in front of me in the body of a tired, dusty boy who chose truth when he could have walked away. Before I even opened my mouth to talk, the story had already entered my heart. I knew the whole of Nigeria would hear it, and I knew this moment was about to change all our lives, including mine. I stood there with the crowd pressing around me, and I felt something rise inside my chest. It was as if the whole noise of the market had gone quiet for a moment. I looked at Segun again. The sun was hitting his face, showing every line of struggle on it, but his eyes were steady. That was the part that held me. His eyes were steady like someone who had decided long ago that he would rather suffer than do wrong. I felt a strong pull toward him, the kind that tells a man that he is standing in the middle of a life-changing moment. I asked him how long he had been a conductor, and he told me since he was 12. He said he used to help his father push wheelbarrows in the market before his father fell sick. He said he became a conductor to feed his family, and even though the work was tough and people insulted him every day, he kept reminding himself not to lose his heart. As he talked, the crowd grew quiet. Everyone listened. Even people selling pepper and fish paused, holding their baskets in the air. The woman he returned the money to, Ada, moved closer to us. She said she had never seen anything like this since she started coming to that market. She said she was already angry and confused over the missing money, thinking maybe she counted wrongly. She said the money meant a lot to her, and she had been praying for small favor because she still had things to buy. I watched her eyes. They were soft and filled with the kind of surprise that stays with a person for a long time. The market women started clapping. Some said Nigeria needed people like Segun. Some said honesty was now rare like diamond. The noise rose again, but this time it was joy. I felt it move through the air like a wave. Something told me to speak, so I turned to the crowd and told them what I had been feeling for months. I told them that I wanted to lead this country with truth. I told them that I believed Nigeria could be better if ordinary people like Segun were encouraged and lifted up. I told them that this small act they were seeing was bigger than the 100 naira. It was the soul of the nation. When I finished talking, the crowd shouted in a way I had never heard before. It was not the normal political noise. It was something deeper. People started saying that if a conductor could be honest, then a leader could be honest too. Some said God had sent me to witness this thing with my own eyes. Some came forward to touch Segun, thanking him for reminding them that goodness still lived in Nigeria. Right there, I made up my mind. I called Segun close and told him quietly that his life was about to change. I told Ada, too, that she was now part of a story that would shake the whole country. Their faces changed. I saw confusion, fear, and hope mixing together like colors of paint. As I looked at them, I realized something true. This moment was no longer just a market scene. It was a seed that was about to grow into something far bigger than all of us. And as the crowd surrounded us with their cheers, I felt it for the first time in years. Nigeria had taken its first breath of new life. After that day in Oyingbo Market, everything moved fast, faster than any of us could understand. News spread like Harmattan fire. Before evening, people were already calling my phone, telling me they saw a video of the conductor on social media. Some said the crowd almost broke the whole market. Some said they cried when they heard him speak. Some said this was the kind of thing Nigeria had been waiting for. I sat in my car listening to all the messages, and in my heart I knew the country had finally found a story that could touch every home. That night, I called my team together. Their eyes were wide with excitement. They said the story was trending everywhere, from radio shows to long lines of comments online. They said people were arguing in beer parlors and streets that if a poor conductor could return 100 naira, then Nigeria still had hope. Some even said they wanted to vote already because the message I spoke in the market entered their hearts. I leaned back in my chair and felt a kind of peace that had been missing for a long time. I knew what I had to do next. The next morning, I invited Sagun and Ada to my campaign office. When they walked in, they looked lost. It was their first time entering a big building with cold air blowing everywhere. Sagun held his cap in his hand, turning it again and again. Ada kept holding a small nylon like she did not want to forget where she came from. I stood up, walked to them, and told them to sit. Their eyes kept moving around the room, like everything was too much for them. I asked Sagun how things were at home. He said his mother cried when she heard what happened because she could not believe the whole country was talking about her son. He said she prayed for me by name, even though she had never met me. He said some people came to their house to greet them, offering small gifts and thanking him for being honest. But he also said their problems were still deep, that his mother's sickness was getting worse, and their rent was almost due. As he talked, the strength in his voice broke a little. Ada spoke too. She said her family did not have much, but they were happy that something good came to them for the first time in a long time. She said her brothers kept replaying the video and shouting that she was now popular. She said people in her street were congratulating her as if she won something. Her smile was soft, shy, and full of new hope. I looked at the two of them, and I knew they had become the true symbol of my campaign. Not the posters on walls, not the words in my speeches, not the long promises I made at rallies. These two ordinary Nigerians carried a message the country had forgotten. Truth, simple, everyday truth. I told them that from that moment forward, they would be the face of my campaign. Their story would go everywhere with me, because their story had the power to lift the nation. When they heard it, both of them froze. I saw fear in their eyes, but I also saw light. I told them not to be afraid, that I would guide them, that the country needed what happened between them in that market. I told them that day was not luck. It was destiny. As they left my office, escorted by my team, I watched them walk down the hallway. Two simple Nigerians who had no idea that everything in their lives was changing. And as I stood there, I felt something strong. I felt like the whole country was quietly turning, slowly but surely, towards a new path. The seed planted in the market was growing, and nothing could stop it now. The day of the election came like a heavy storm that refused to hide its power. Streets were full. People came out early, some with wrappers tied around their waist, some with babies on their backs, some leaning on walking sticks. Everywhere I looked, I saw faces carrying quiet hope. For months, the story of Sagun and Ada had moved across Nigeria like wind. It entered villages, towns, and cities. It entered buses, marketplaces, classrooms, and parlors. It became a reminder that this country still had something good to hold on to. And now, the whole nation was ready to decide if that goodness could lead them. When the results started coming in, I sat in a small room with my team. Nobody spoke. Nobody coughed. Nobody even shifted their chair. All eyes stayed glued to the screen. The numbers kept climbing, state after state, and before long it became clear. This was not a small win. It was a wave, a voice that rose from millions of homes saying they were tired of fear, tired of lies, tired of shame, and ready for a new story. When the final announcement was made, the whole room exploded. My team shouted. Some jumped, some cried. I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me. All I could think of was the dusty boy in the market holding 100 naira in his hand and the young woman staring at him in shock. How far we had come from that simple moment. How the whole country had followed the line from that one act of honesty to this day of victory. 2 days after the election, I called Sagun and Ada to the State House. They walked in slowly, looking around like they had entered another world. Sagun wore a new shirt that was slightly too big for him. Ada wore a simple dress with calm colors. When they reached me, I stood up and hugged them one by one. I told Sagun that he would now serve as the union leader of the National Road Transport Workers, working closely with the Minister of Transportation. His hands began to shake. He kept looking at me like he did not believe his own life anymore. I told Ada that she would work with the Ministry of Youth and Sports Development, leading a new honesty program for young people. Her eyes filled with water. She covered her mouth with her hand as if the words were too heavy to swallow. I told them that they were no longer just a conductor and a market woman. They were now leaders, symbols, teachers for a new Nigeria. From that moment, everything began to shift. Schools started inviting Ada to speak. She would stand in front of hundreds of young people and tell them how one small act of truth changed her whole life. Segun traveled across states, meeting road workers, changing old habits, bringing order where there used to be chaos. Slowly, things started improving. Markets became calmer. Transport became more organized. Government offices began to fear shame. Month by month, Nigeria started to rise. It was not magic. It was not easy. But the story of Segun and Ada kept pushing the nation forward. People began to say that if a conductor refused to steal 100 naira, then they had no right to take what did not belong to them. Even outside the country, leaders started asking how Nigeria had managed to change so fast. Sometimes late at night, I would sit in my office and think back to the first day I saw them. I would remember the crowd shouting, the dusty note in Segun's hand, and the soft shock on Ada's face. That small scene had grown into a new foundation for the country, and I knew deep inside me that this was how great nations are born. Not from big speeches or loud promises, but from simple people who choose to do the right thing even when nobody is watching. The day he returned, her change did not just change 2 lives. It changed a whole nation. And every day that passed, Nigeria walked proudly into a future built on truth.